Today is lesson 11, and today we're going to look at file uploading with PHP. Now, some of the things we're going to do are similar, even if we're using a different server-side scripting language. Some of the basic process is pretty similar, no matter what technology we're using. So we're going to look at how do we upload a file, how do we include it in an HTML form, how do we validate that the file meets our requirements? So, for example, is it the right type of file? Is it the right size that we want to allow? How can we rename the file so we make sure when a user uploads a file, it doesn't overwrite a file with that existing name that's already on the server? And then also, how do we parse out some of the details of that file so we can also store information about it in the database? Either when we're creating a new record, so in our case, when we're adding a new movie, or when we're updating an existing record. How can we attach a file to it? And if that file is already there, that we don't overwrite it. And then lastly, we want to be able to, we're going to work with image files today. So we want to be able to display those files as part of our application. So when we're looking at a movie, we can upload a movie poster image to it. And when we look at those movie details, we can also see the movie poster as part of that record. So that's what we're going to do today. And this is one of the things, one of the requirements for assignment 3. So we wanted to make sure that we go over it today. Okay. And just a reminder, assignment 3, it's due, sorry, assignment, I said assignment 3, I mean assignment 2. It's due next Sunday night. So you still have a week to complete assignment 2. And if you haven't started, you definitely need to get started on it to give yourself time to complete. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to give you just sort of a quick overview, quick walkthrough, not a lot of slides, 9 slides to give you kind of a high look at a high level of how the file uploading process works. And then we're going to do first just a standalone example, just browse the file and let's see if we can upload it. And it won't be, so when I say standalone, I mean those pages won't really be integrated into the rest of our PHP Flicks site. Once we understand the basic mechanics of file uploads, then we can modify our movie details to allow us the ability to attach a poster, a movie image, to each individual movie. So file uploading is a really common process. Most web applications have some form of file upload mechanism for various reasons, different use cases, but the process, it really runs the same way. Using the chat, can you think of an example? What's one web application that you use that allows you to upload files to the web application through your browser? Okay, so yeah, Blackboard is one, right? That's how you upload your assignments, is typically you upload the files through Blackboard. Sarah says Instagram, absolutely. I mean, Instagram, that's how all the content comes, right? You don't really type content in. You do, but the main content is the photos and video, the media content, so we're uploading. Yeah, could Tyler on Twitter as well, right? We can tweet just in text, but we can attach photos and video, so again in Twitter. So most social media, the core content in a lot of social media actually happens through file uploading. So it's something we use all the time. Typically, if we build, one of the other common use cases is allowing the owner of our site to upload data, often from spreadsheets. They want to be able to upload it to the web application and then have that data read out of a spreadsheet or out of a text file and saved to the database. Because many organizations have data in Excel or they have data in text files. And when we're building a new web application for them, they don't want to manually have to enter all those records through the web application. So if they already have it in some kind of file format, they want to just be able to upload that file so the data can be read into the database automatically in a script. Or another common use of that, once had a customer, they had an e-commerce site. So every morning they would get from their supplier, they would get a list of tracking numbers. The supplier would ship out all their orders and they would send an Excel file that had each order number and the tracking number. So My customer said, I don't want my staff to have to manually type all the tracking numbers into the back end of our system. We just want to be able to upload a file and you save all the tracking numbers and send the emails out to the customer. So where we have batch processing, file uploading is often used to prevent users from having to enter data manually in databases. Okay, so here were some of the common use cases. You mentioned some of them, like a social media, learning management system. I mentioned, yeah, uploading products as well. So often a company will have their products in a spreadsheet and they just want to be able to upload those and have them populate their database. Even something like webmail. So your Outlook, your Georgian Mail through your browser or Gmail, when you add an attachment to that, it's using a file upload utility through your web browser. So how does the process actually work? We've got a file, our user on our website has a file on their machine, on their device. Maybe it's a photo on their phone they want to upload to Instagram. So whenever we've got, whenever we want to let somebody upload a file, we need a couple things. We need a form, because forms are always required to capture inputs from users. We're familiar with forms, but we're going to use a special kind of form. So it's a regular HTML form, looks like a regular HTML form, but in the form tag itself, there's this attribute we're going to need to add. ENC type equals multi-part form data. So ENC type, this stands for encoding type. If we don't include this attribute, we will not be able to upload files through our form. So what this attribute, what it does, so we've got a file here on our device and we want to upload it over the internet to the web server. So adding this encoding type, what it will do when our form gets submitted, this indicates that any files we attach to the form submission are going to get converted to binary format. So yesterday was out for brunch and we were in the restaurant at a diner, and the diner had a robot that came and delivered food. It was like a tray on wheels, like a giant Roomba vacuum. And people started pulling out their phones and taking pictures of the robot and immediately uploading them to social media. So if you're on their Instagram page, what they were going to do, you take a photo on your phone, you have it in a JPEG or a PNG format, and this encoding type, when we press upload, it's going to convert that to binary, to ones and zeros, and it's actually the binary code that gets transferred. So the file doesn't get sent in JPEG or PNG format, it gets transferred in binary. And then once it reaches the server, it gets reconverted back to that original file format. So it might go from JPEG to binary along the route and then back to JPEG here. Our form will also need at least one input with the type attribute of file. And that will give the user a browse button that allows them to browse their device, whether it's their phone, their tablet, their computer, and choose a file that lives on their local file system. So that's the front end, that's the first page. We've got our form with our encoding type and multi-part form data, and we have an input with type equals file. We can have multiple. If we want to allow the user to upload multiple files, we can do that as well. And then we're going to have a PHP page that will process our form post. And here's the way PHP does it. When a file gets uploaded, so again, I'm uploading a photo to my Instagram. I don't have Instagram, but if I did, I'm sure many of you do. When we upload the file, it first gets saved to a temporary location in the server cache. Now, it won't stay there forever. If we leave the file in the temp location, I think it gets deleted after about 20 minutes. I'm not sure what the default timeout is. So what this allows us to do, well, why would we upload the file to a temporary location first? Why don't we just upload the file directly to whatever folder we want that file to be saved? Yeah, exactly, Sarah. So we can validate it before we wind up processing and saving it. So is it the right file type? So for example, if it's an Instagram media gallery, we don't want somebody uploading an Excel file. So is it the right file type? We might also want to validate the size. So oftentimes there are restrictions on file sizes. For example, I had a customer and we built an application where users uploaded their photos, but they needed the photos to be within a certain size range. If the photos were too small, they couldn't process them, and if they were too large, they couldn't process them. So we would check that every photo was between 100 kilobytes and 5 megabytes. Anything smaller or anything larger, we would reject and show the user an error and ask them to upload a different file. So we can check the type, we can check the size, any other requirements. And then there are properties we can access of the file. So we can find out things like the original name and the file extension. We can find out the file type. Now the file type in PHP is a little bit misleading because this can be spoofed. So we'll see how this works. So this will simply tell you what the extension is, but it won't tell you the actual file type. So this is kind of dangerous. This is a good target for hackers, so we'll have to address this. We can find out the size, and that's in bytes, not in kilobytes. And then we get the temporary name, which is the temporary upload location. So where is this file living in the server cache while we check it? Okay. So we'll want to check. You may want to check these things. We're also going to make sure our file is named uniquely. So the default in PHP, if we upload a file and a file with that name already exists, the default behavior in PHP is that it will simply overwrite the old file. Now that might be okay in some applications, but in most applications, that's going to be a problem. So before we move the file out of cache and save it to where we want to make sure we give it a unique name. So that if there's already a file with that name, the original file won't be overwritten. So we'll look at how to do that. And we're going to use, in PHP, we can use the session object to get a unique ID that we can attach to each file name. And then the key method we're going to use is built-in function in the PHP code library called move uploaded file. So that takes a file from the temporary location and it allows us to point it to move it into a specific folder. So we're going to create an images file folder, and all of our movie poster images, ultimately, we're going to save them in there. Now, there's one other little gotcha. When we work on this, as we're developing it, it's going to work fine on our local web server. But by default, when we upload our code to AWS, we won't be able to upload files. And that's because the way our AWS server is set up is and many web servers will prevent anonymous users from writing new files to the system. So we can modify these permissions in our FTP program. If we're using FileZilla, I'll show you how to modify the permissions to our images folder so that our upload script is also going to work on the web server. By default, it won't work and we won't get any error message. The file just will never appear. So we'll need to manually enable the writing permissions into that folder. So there's our basic process. These slides are on Blackboard for you right here as reference. So you can refer to them during your assignment. Right here is this item, the file upload slides. So let's get connected and get our application running for today. So I will connect to OpenVPN. And I'll start up Apache. And I will open up my PHP Flix app in Visual Studio Code. Our AWS server has seemed to be better the last few weeks. And it's not cooperating with us right now. Oh, okay, it is. So we're gonna build just first a simple upload and save page, like I said, just to test this out. And then we'll integrate our file uploads into the movie details and movies pages a little later. We're just gonna do a simple upload first. So I'm gonna close up my files. I'm just gonna make a new folder. These are test pages. So these are pages we're not really they're not going to be part of the ultimate PHP application. We're not gonna link to them. These are just for kind of playing around and learning. So you don't need to do this, but I'm just trying to simplify things a little bit. I could probably move a few of my other pages in here. So inside of my test pages directory, I'm going to make a new file, which I will call upload test. I'm not even going to bother with our, including our header or our database. We don't need it. So this will just be a plain HTML page. This will be our upload test. I'm not going to bother with any CSS or styling here at all. We're really just interested in the mechanics of file uploading. So keep it as simple as possible. Just put on a form where our method is post, and our action will be save, upload. So there's not going to be any PHP code at all on this page. It's plain HTML. But this is where we need to add that encoding type attribute. We're used to using method and action properties of our form. But now we're going to add this one. ENC type equals multi-part form data. So this attribute must be included in order for our file, any files to be uploaded. We'll see later, I'll remove that attribute from my form and we can see what happens without it. We'll add an input with type equals file. With a name of and then we'll just have a button that says submit. So there's no CSS, there's no PHP, there's only two new elements we haven't seen before on this page. There's the encoding type, and there is the type equals file attribute. That's it. Let's go have a look at how this renders in our browser. So this is in our test pages / upload test. So there's the link to it. So this is what it looks like. Isn't it beautiful? So I get a browse button that says no file selected, and I have a submit button. Now, one interesting thing to note about this input type is different browsers have a slightly different rendering of it. So this is how it looks in Firefox. In Chrome, it's going to look just a bit different. In Firefox, it says no file selected. Chrome says no file chosen. Here is in Edge. All Edge and Chrome look the same. They both say no file chosen. And this input type equals file, this is actually one of the only slightly intelligent HTML objects. HTML is largely dumb. All it does is render or present data. But this input type equals file, it actually has functionality that when we click it, it opens a file dialog box and we can browse the files and folders on our device. Okay, so I can choose file, and then I can submit my form to the next page. And right now we get a 404 error because we haven't written our save page yet. Right, so the form piece is fairly simple. Are there any questions before we go and build the page that will actually save the file? So I'm going to build, now going to build my save upload test. Again, inside my test pages. And I'll make sure I spell it so that the file name matches the form action name so we don't get a 404 not found error. Now we're just going to put some PHP code on here. We're not even going to worry about a header. So we're going to get the uploaded file. Get the original file name. Then so this is what we'll do here. We're going to access the file that was uploaded, and then we'll try to access the various properties of the file. So I'll create a variable called myFile. I can't do that in PHP. File equals. Now, when we're accessing a file upload, we won't actually use the post array. Normally, when we're processing the form values, we use post. Which of these are we going to use instead? We want to get information about the file that was uploaded. We don't actually use post. You got it, Elena and Tyler. We're going to use the files array or the files collection. So this will access the file input control that we called my-file. So we gave it a name of my-file, so we can access that with $_files, my file. So each file has a number of properties, and the first property, the most common we'll work with, is the file name. So this will tell us the original name of the file that the user uploaded. So we can try this out. Use your form, browse to a file. So this file is luna.jpg. Got some puppy photos here from another course. So when I submit, it tells me that the file is called luna.jpg. If I go back and choose a different file name, or maybe I choose even a different file type entirely, so I can really upload any sort of file. So I'm going to show you about the file type. So there is a type property that we can access as well. So I'm just going to refresh this, say yes, resend my form post. So here's the file name, and in this particular file, the type is application PDF. I'll go back, try a different one. So when I pick a JPEG, it tells me the type is image/JPEG. Now there is a gotcha here. There's an issue with this. Let's say I go and get an image. So I'll take this. Okay, I'm going to take this image. I'll just make a copy of it here. So I've got this image here, right? It's a JPEG. If I change it to like an executable file extension, so this looks like an executable. And when I submit it, it looks at the extension and says, oh, this is some kind of application that can be executed. It's not really. This is an image file. So when we use this file type, we can't be guaranteed that we're actually getting the proper file type. So instead, we need to use something else instead. Instead of this, so I'll just put on a comment here. This does not guarantee accurate. So how do we actually get the file type regardless of the file extension? There's another way we do this. We've got a method here called Mime content type. And then we pass in, sorry, we'll come back to this. We need to get the temp location first. My bad, sorry. We'll just move this. We'll come back to this. We need to do the others first. But we can get the file size. So we can use the size attribute. And this will tell us how big the file is. Yes, Hamid, that's right. It only considers the extension, but it doesn't really look at the file, right? It's like, it would like when you cross the border and at immigration, when someone says, where are you from? And I say, I'm from Russia, but they don't ask me for a passport. Right? With type, you can say anything. It just looks at the extension, but it doesn't actually validate. If I had a passport, it would have to prove where I was from. So we're going to use this Mime content type instead. That's like a validation of the file type, no matter what the extension is. So this will show us the size in bytes of the file. Again, go and browse something. So here I've got my lesson plan, or my Word document. So it shows us 28 kilobytes on my computer. File, because my file is open. Okay, here's one. I have a Word document, it's 13 kilobytes. And that works out to 1,373 bytes. So 1024 bytes is equal to 1 kilobyte. So there's an attribute called TMP underscore name. And this will give us the original location of where that file lives in the server cache. And again, it's not there forever. If we don't save that file permanently into a permanent folder, eventually it'll get deleted. So let's see how this works. I'll resubmit my form. And it shows me on our local host, the file is in the XAMPP folder. There's a TMP directory. And it gives me a file with PHP AA74. Now what we're going to notice is every file upload is going to have a unique temporary name. It's going to go into a different place. So if I refresh my page and I upload this exact same Word document, the file name, so I'll put this one in the chat. And if I refresh and resend, notice I get a different value this time. So even though I'm uploading the same file, same user, same browser, it will always get a unique place in the temporary or cache memory. So it's always going to be different. And we can use this TMP name property. We need it along with our Mime content type now, where we are detecting the actual content type of a file. So now we can re-enable this with file TMP name. So this Mime content type will tell us the actual type of file it is. It will ignore the file extension. So I'll try this, and I'll try this out with a few normal files and then I'll try it again with that file where I've changed the extension. So it tells me this is an application open XML Office document, Word document. This was my file that before it told me was an executable, but the Mime content type, it says, no, this is actually a JPEG. It's ignoring the extension. So the Mime content type is accurate. It knows this file is a photo, even if I've said it's not a photo. So when we're incorporating our file uploads into our PHP flicks, we will want to make sure that the only file types that are allowed are JPEGs or PNG files. We're not going to allow any other file type, but we're going to use MIME content type rather than this type attribute, because this one can be spoofed, can be manipulated. The MIME content type cannot be, so it's safer. Anybody have any questions so far? The last thing we'll do, we already have an IMG directory that we made last week when we put our little show and hide. So what we want to do is take the file out of its temporary location and save it into this folder. So we use the method move uploaded file, one of the rare PHP methods that actually has a good descriptive name. So there's two parameters here. Where is the file currently, and where are we saving it to? And with what name, in case we want to rename it. So we're moving it from the file's temporary location, and we're moving it to our images folder, and we're going to keep the file name. In this case, we're not going to change it. So whatever the file was called originally, we want it to keep that name. Later on, we'll worry about making sure our files don't get overwritten if there are two files with the same name. But right now, we won't worry about that. So if I upload a file now, I mean, in which part? Well, the file gets uploaded to a temp location by default. That's the way that PHP works, as we mentioned. The file's automatically saved to a temp location, so we can inspect the file first before we save it to the permanent directory. Because maybe there's a problem with the file. Maybe it's the wrong type, maybe it's not the right size. So we don't want to save it to the images directory yet. It goes to the temp location first. So that gives us a chance to validate it and show any error messages. And only if the file is good, then we will move it out of the temp folder into the images directory. So I'm going to save that. And I'll go back. Oops. So now I'll find an image again. So I'll pick a photo. I'll click submit. Okay, what happened here? No such file. Ah, right, I'm in the wrong path. Thank you, Tyler. We're inside of our, you know what, I'm just going to create a test folder in here. Inside of the test pages, I'll make a new folder here as well, called IMG. So inside of my test pages, I made an images, an IMG folder. Or else, yes, I would have to go .. /. Good catch. I'll refresh. My error goes away. And now I can see a copy of that image was uploaded in here. I can go back and browse, find another image, submit, and it's now saved here as well. So I can keep going if I want. I can upload as many files. And every time I upload one, it now winds up inside my test. My test page is IMG. I do want to show you the most common error, and the most common error I see when working with file upload. The most common error is not actually on this page. The most common error is actually back in our form. And that is the omission or forgetting to put in the encoding type. So if I do this, I've got my form, I've got my type equals file, but without my encoding type, I'll show you what happens. Back, reload my form. So there's no encoding type in my form tag. Now I browse, I pick an image. So now I get this undefined array key. So that this object, this files array with the my file, it doesn't exist. So you'll notice as soon as I remove that encoding type, no file gets uploaded, which means all the code I've written to try to parse and copy that file, it all crashes. Because this binary transfer of the file never happens without that encoding type. Okay, so this attribute is absolutely mandatory on any form where you're going to let users upload any sort of file. File upload will just not happen without it. So it must be there. So I put that encoding type back, refresh my form, browse, and now everything works again, and my new file is copied. So those are our basics. Our form's got an encoding type attribute of multi-part form data. We have at least one input type equals file, and then we can access that file through the files collection. I will show you one other quick gotcha. I'm also just going to add a text box in here. So just a regular input, call it some text. So the form now has two inputs. Actually, you know what? I'll put it in here as this. I'll put in as a description. So I have a regular text box plus a file upload. So just add this simple input into your form. We'll do this and we're almost due for a break. So now on the next page, this is something that often confuses students, so we should just go over it quickly. Okay, so I used the files collection to get the file. For the description, which is in a regular text box, do we use files to read the description value, or do we use post like we normally do? This is something that I think a lot of people find confusing when they first learn file upload. So Tyler says post, okay? Any other opinions? Do we use files or post to access the description? Elena says file. Can I get a third vote? Hamid says post. And Tyler says post. Okay, it is post. So this is possible. Even though these are in the same form, we only use the files collection to access the inputs with type equals file. All the other inputs on the form, we just use post as usual. I'll make a note here. Okay, so we access any uploaded files with the files array, but all our other inputs that are not file uploads, we still use post. So even though these are in the same form, we access them differently. Okay, so that's an important thing to note. That we'll only use files for the file upload. Everything else we just use post as usual, even when they're together in one form. Okay, it is 8:49, so I am going to push everything up to Git in case you need to reference anything. Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 9 o'clock, so it's lesson 11:1. Simple upload. Okay, code's been pushed. Let's come back at 9. And then we want to integrate this process into our movie details. So when we are adding or editing a movie, we can attach a movie poster to it. We can validate that movie poster. We can save the details to the database. And then we can also display the posters along with all of the movies. Okay, so we will start on that when we come back.